Daniel Hayes was 7 minutes late, his daughter's lunchbox still sitting on the kitchen counter, when he threw the car into reverse and slammed on the brakes. A moving truck sat squarely across his driveway like a beached whale. He was already forming the words he'd shout at whoever was responsible when he saw her, dark hair caught in the morning light, directing two movers with the same focused intensity he remembered from a decade ago. Lena Carter, the woman he'd loved in silence through 2 years of college, the one who got away without ever knowing she was running. If you're wondering how this story ends, stay with me, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this journey travels. Daniel sat frozen behind the wheel, engine still running, watching Lena point toward a leather couch the movers were angling through the front door of the house, directly across from his. 10 years collapsed into nothing. She wore jeans and a faded university sweatshirt he recognized, the same one she'd worn to the library those late nights when they'd studied at adjacent tables, never quite brave enough to study together. "Dad?" His daughter's voice cut through the fog. "We're going to be really late." Emma. Right. 3rd grade. Mrs. Patterson, who marked tardies in red ink. "Just a second, sweetheart." He should back down the driveway onto the lawn, navigate around the truck, get Emma to school. Instead, he shifted into park and stepped out of the car. Lena was arguing with one of the movers about a dresser. "I said the bedroom at the top of the stairs, not the one facing the street. They're clearly labeled." The mover, a thick-necked guy with a clipboard, shrugged. "Lady, you want it moved again. That's another—" "I'll help you move it," Daniel said. 3 heads turned toward him. Emma had gotten out of the car too, her backpack dragging on the driveway. Lena's expression shifted through several states: confusion, recognition, something that might have been pleasure before settling on polite surprise. "Daniel?" "Hi." The word came out stupidly simple. "You're blocking my driveway." "Oh, God." She looked at his car, then back at him. "I'm so sorry. Mike, can you move the truck forward about 10 feet? The thick-necked mover sighed heavily, but trudged toward the cab. "I didn't realize anyone lived here," Lena said. "The realtor said the house across the street was occupied, but I never thought—" She stopped, seeming to catch herself. "You live here? 4 years now. Small world. Getting smaller, apparently." Emma tugged on his sleeve. "Dad, we're really, really late." Lena looked down at his daughter, and something crossed her face that Daniel couldn't quite read. "You should go. I'm sorry about the truck." "It's fine." It wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. "Welcome to the neighborhood." He got back in the car, pulled onto the lawn to get around the truck once it moved, and drove Emma to school in a daze. She chattered about something involving a class hamster and a loose cage door, but he caught maybe every 3rd word. When he pulled up to the drop-off zone, she kissed his cheek and said, "Who was that pretty lady?" "Someone I used to know." "She's our new neighbor?" "Looks like it." "Cool." Emma hopped out of the car with the resilience of 8-year-olds who hadn't yet learned that sometimes the past showing up on your doorstep was anything but cool. Daniel drove to work on autopilot. He managed medical equipment sales for a regional distributor, a job that required exactly enough focus to keep him from thinking too hard about the rest of his life. He'd built a good existence for himself and Emma after Sarah left. Structured, predictable, safe. Lena Carter represented none of those things. They'd met his sophomore year, her junior year, in a Victorian literature course he'd taken to fill a humanities requirement. She'd sat 3 rows ahead of him and asked questions that made the professor pause and reconsider his own arguments. Daniel had developed what his roommate called a pathetic crush within 2 weeks. They'd orbited each other for 2 years. Library study sessions where they'd exchanged nods across the reading room, coffee shop encounters that never quite evolved into actual conversations. A student protest against tuition hikes where they'd stood 20 feet apart, chanting the same slogans. He'd rehearsed opening lines in his head 1,000 times, but the words never made it past his throat. Then she graduated. He saw her at commencement from a distance, watched her hug friends and take photos with her parents, and told himself he'd finally talk to her at one of the graduation parties. But she never showed up to any of them, and by the time he worked up the courage to find her on social media, she'd moved across the country for graduate school. He'd convinced himself he was over it. Married Sarah a few years later, had Emma, built a life that made sense on paper. When Sarah decided that life wasn't enough, and left them for a marketing executive in Denver, Daniel had been hurt, but not destroyed. The worst part was realizing he'd never really loved Sarah the way he should have. He'd settled for comfortable instead of waiting for something real. And now real was moving in across the street. His phone rang around 11. His mother. "I hear we have new neighbors," she said without preamble. "How do you already know that?" Linda Pemberton saw the moving truck. She said, "A woman around your age. Single?" "I have no idea, Mom." "You should bring her a casserole. Nobody does that anymore." "Well, maybe they should. Community is important, Daniel." He let her talk about community and neighborhood bonds and the importance of making people feel welcome while he stared at a spreadsheet that might as well have been written in ancient Greek for all the sense it made to him right now. When he got home that evening, Emma insisted on riding her bike in the driveway. Daniel sat on the front steps with a beer he wasn't really drinking, pretending to read emails on his phone while actually watching Lena's house. She emerged around 6:30, carrying trash bags to the curb. She changed into yoga pants and a t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She moved with the same purposeful efficiency he remembered, economical and focused. Their eyes met across the street. She raised a hand in a small wave. He waved back. Emma circled over on her bike. "Can I go say hi?" "Maybe let her get settled first, honey." "But you said she's nice." "I said I used to know her. That's different." Emma gave him the look she'd perfected lately, the one that said she could see through his excuses but was choosing not to call him on it. Then she pedaled across the street anyway. Daniel's heart rate kicked up as he watched Emma hop off her bike and approach Lena. They talked for a minute, Emma gesturing animatedly at something, Lena laughing. Then Lena glanced over at him with an expression he couldn't decipher and said something that made Emma nod seriously before cycling back. "She's really nice," Emma announced. "She said I should come over sometime and she'll show me how to make friendship bracelets." "That's nice of her." "Are you going to go talk to her?" "Eventually." "Why not now?" Because 10 years ago he'd been too afraid, and apparently he'd learned nothing since then. "She's busy unpacking." Emma rolled her eyes with the dramatic flair of someone who'd been practicing. "You're weird, Dad." Over the next 3 days, Daniel perfected the art of leaving for work at times that wouldn't coincide with Lena's schedule, which he absolutely was not tracking. Except he was. She left around 8:15 most mornings, dressed in business casual, carrying a leather messenger bag. She returned around 6. Sometimes she went for a run in the evening. Twice, packages were delivered that she carried inside without any visible struggle despite their size. On Thursday evening, his doorbell rang while he was helping Emma with math homework that seemed unnecessarily complicated for 3rd grade. Lena stood on his porch holding a bottle of wine. "I know this is weird," she said before he could speak, "but I wanted to thank you properly for being patient about the truck thing. And also, I just realized I moved to a neighborhood where I don't know anyone, and you're literally the only familiar face within 100 miles, so I'm choosing to ignore how awkward this might be." She'd always talked like that when she was nervous, Daniel remembered, long sentences that tumbled over each other. "It's not awkward," he lied. "It's definitely awkward, but I'm pretending it isn't." Emma appeared at his elbow. "Is that the friendship bracelet lady?" Lena laughed. "I'm apparently the friendship bracelet lady now." "Hi, Emma. Your dad told you my name?" "No, I asked Mrs. Pemberton. She knows everything about everyone." "Emma," Daniel said. "What?" "She does, so?" Lena held up the wine bottle. "I was going to offer this as a peace offering, but I'm guessing you're busy with homework." "We're always busy with homework," Emma said. "But Dad says it's important to be neighborly." Daniel shot his daughter a look. "I never said that." "Grandma did. Same thing." Lena's smile widened. "How about I hold on to this and maybe sometime when you're not drowning in 3rd grade math we can crack it open?" "That would be nice," Daniel said, trying to sound casual instead of like his pulse had just kicked up 20 beats per minute. "Good." She started to leave, then turned back. "And Daniel, it's really good to see you. I mean that." She was gone before he could respond. Emma looked up at him. "You like her?" "I barely know her anymore." "You have your weird face on." "I don't have a weird face." "You totally do. It's the same face you made when the barista at the coffee place smiled at you last month." "Can we please get back to your homework?" Emma grinned. Sure, Dad. Friday morning, Daniel's carefully constructed schedule fell apart when his car refused to start. Dead battery. He called for a jump from roadside assistance while Emma ate cereal and pointed out they were going to be late again. He was standing in the driveway waiting for the service truck when Lena pulled out of her garage. She stopped when she saw him, rolled down her window. Car trouble? Battery's dead. I've got jumper cables. You don't have to... Daniel... She put the car in park and got out. We're neighbors. Let me help. They worked in companionable silence, Lena clearly knowing what she was doing with the cables. When the engine finally turned over, she stepped back and wiped her hands on her slacks. Thank you, he said. Anytime. She checked her watch. I've got to run, but that offer about the wine still stands. Tomorrow night? If you're free? Yeah. Emma usually stays with my mom on Saturdays. Perfect. 7? 7 works. She smiled, got back in her car, and drove away, leaving Daniel standing in his driveway wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. Emma appeared beside him. You're doing the face again. Get in the car. Saturday evening arrived with the inevitability of a deadline. Daniel changed shirts 3 times before Emma noticed and gave him grief about it. His mother picked up his daughter at 5, giving him a knowing look that he determinedly ignored. At 7 sharp, he walked across the street with the kind of nervous energy he hadn't felt since high school. Lena answered the door in jeans and a sweater that looked effortlessly put together in a way he'd never master. Her house smelled like something with garlic and herbs. I made pasta, she said. Hope that's okay. I'm not much of a cook, but I can manage not to poison anyone with marinara sauce. Pasta's great. Her living room was about half unpacked, books stacked on the floor waiting for shelves, art leaning against walls, a leather couch he recognized from that first morning. Sorry about the mess, she said. Turns out moving is harder than I thought. How long have you been planning this? The move? About 6 months. The divorce took a year before that. The word hung in the air between them. I'm sorry, Daniel said. Don't be. Best decision I ever made. She handed him a glass of wine. What about you? Emma mentioned her mom's in Denver? Sarah left 3 years ago. It was, he searched for the right word, necessary. I know that feeling. They settled on the couch with their wine, and for a while they just talked. Safe topics at first. Her new job teaching English at the community college. His work in medical equipment sales. Emma's obsession with hamsters and her campaign to get one as a pet. But gradually the conversation shifted, the way it does when 2 people are actually listening instead of just waiting for their turn to speak. I thought about reaching out, Lena said, after graduation. I kept telling myself I'd send you a message or something. Why didn't you? Same reason you probably didn't reach out to me. Fear, I guess, of looking stupid, of being wrong about whether you felt the same way. Daniel's heart did something complicated in his chest. You knew that you had a crush on me? She smiled. Daniel, you weren't exactly subtle. You used to rearrange your whole schedule to study in the library when I was there. Heat crept up his neck. I thought I was being discreet. You were sweet. I liked it. Then why? Because I was dating Marcus at the time. And by the time we broke up, you'd stopped showing up at the library. I figured you'd moved on. I was trying to give you space. I thought that's what you wanted. I wanted you to be brave enough to actually talk to me. The words landed like a punch. Not cruel, just honest. I was 20 years old and terrified, Daniel said quietly. I know, so was I. She refilled their wine glasses. I married someone safe, you know, someone who looked good on paper. Steady job, came from a good family, said all the right things, and I spent 8 years trying to convince myself that was enough. What changed? I did. Or maybe I just finally admitted I'd been lying to myself. She looked at him directly. What about you and Sarah? I married someone who needed me, or who I thought needed me. Turned out what she really needed was to not be married to me. That's rough. It was a relief, honestly. The hard part was watching Emma deal with it. She seems like a great kid. She's the best thing I ever did. They talked until the wine bottle was empty and the pasta had gone cold. Lena told him about teaching freshman composition students who thought SparkNotes counted as research. Daniel told her about his mother's relentless campaign to set him up with every single woman within a 30-mile radius. They laughed about terrible college parties and professors they'd had in common, and that one time, the fire alarm went off during finals week and everyone had to evacuate in their pajamas. It was easy. Too easy. Like slipping into a conversation they'd started years ago and never quite finished. Around 11, Daniel realized he should probably leave. But he didn't want to. "I should let you get some sleep," he said anyway. Lena walked him to the door. "This was nice." "It was. We should do it again, if you want." "I want." The words came out more intense than he'd intended. Lena's eyes held his for a long moment. "Good," she said softly. He walked back across the street feeling like he'd just stepped off a roller coaster, exhilarated and slightly unsteady. Over the next few weeks, a routine developed. Coffee on Sunday mornings on one of their porches, weather permitting. Emma had taken to visiting Lena after school sometimes, coming home with elaborate friendship bracelets and stories about college life. Lena helped Daniel install a new light fixture in his kitchen when he couldn't figure out the wiring. He helped her assemble a bookshelf that came with instructions written by someone who clearly hated humanity. They didn't talk about the past again, not directly, but it hummed underneath everything, a frequency only they could hear. Then came the morning when Daniel walked outside to find Lena standing in his driveway holding a coffee from the good place downtown. "Rough night?" he asked. "Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about something." "What's that?" She handed him the coffee. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if one of us had been braver back then?" The question he'd been avoiding for weeks. "Every day since you moved in," he admitted. "Me too." They stood there in the early morning quiet, the admission hanging between them like morning fog. "I don't want to mess this up," Lena said, "whatever this is." "What do you want it to be?" "I don't know yet. But I know I'm tired of being afraid of the answer." Emma's face appeared in the window above them, pressed against the glass. She waved enthusiastically. Lena laughed. "We have an audience. We always do. Does that bother you?" "No." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, the way he'd been too scared to do 10 years ago. "Nothing about this bothers me except that I waited so long." "You're not waiting anymore, though." "No, I'm not." Lena smiled, and it was the smile he remembered from those library study sessions, the one that had made him forget whatever textbook he was supposed to be reading. "Good," she said, "because I'm not either." She left for work, and Daniel stood in his driveway holding the coffee she'd brought him, feeling like maybe the universe occasionally got the timing right after all. That evening, Emma cornered him while he was making dinner. "Are you and Miss Carter dating?" Daniel nearly dropped the knife he was using to chop vegetables. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you smile different when you talk about her. And you brought her flowers yesterday." "They were from the grocery store." "I was just being nice." "Dad." Emma gave him that look again. "I'm 8, not stupid." "I know you're not stupid, sweetheart. So are you?" "It's complicated." "That means yes." "It means I don't know yet. We're friends, good friends." "But you want it to be more." How did 8-year-olds get so perceptive? "Maybe," he admitted. "How would you feel about that?" Emma considered this seriously. "I like her, she's nice to me, and she doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby, and she makes you happy." "She does?" "You sing in the shower now. You never used to do that." Daniel hadn't even realized he'd been doing that. "If we did date," he said carefully, "things might change around here." "Things change anyway," Emma said with the wisdom of someone who'd already weathered her mother leaving. "At least this change would be a good one." He pulled her into a hug, grateful beyond words that somehow, despite all his mistakes, he'd managed to raise such an incredible kid. The following Saturday, Lena invited them both over for dinner. She'd attempted lasagna with mixed results. "The middle's a little soggy," she admitted as they sat down to eat. "It's perfect," Emma said loyally. They ate and talked and laughed, and Daniel watched his daughter and Lena bond over their shared love of terrible puns and complicated friendship bracelet patterns. There was an ease to it that felt both new and ancient, like they were creating something fresh while also picking up threads from years ago. After Emma went home to finish homework, Daniel stayed to help with dishes. She's wonderful, Lena said, scrubbing a pan that had seen better days. She likes you too. I'm glad. Lena paused, hands still in the soapy water. Can I ask you something? Anything. Are you happy? Generally, I mean, with your life? The question caught him off guard. I am. Emma makes everything worthwhile, works fine. I've got a good life. But? But what? There's always a but. She was right, of course. But sometimes I wonder what I missed out on, he said quietly. All those chances I didn't take because I was too scared to look stupid or get rejected. Sometimes I feel like I'm good at building a nice, safe life and terrible at actually living it. Lena dried her hands and turned to face him. I spent 8 years in a marriage that looked perfect from the outside. Nice house, stable income, dinner parties with successful friends. And I was miserable because I chose safe over real. Is that why you moved here? Partly. Also because I got the job at the college. But yeah, I needed a fresh start somewhere. I didn't have to keep pretending everything was fine. Are you? Fine. Getting there. She stepped closer. Being here helps. Having you here helps. The space between them felt charged, electric. Lena, I know this is complicated, she said. I know I just got divorced and you've got Emma to think about, and we have this whole history of bad timing. But I don't want to keep being careful about everything. What do you want? To stop wondering what if? Daniel's phone buzzed in his pocket. His mother texting to say Emma was ready to be picked up. The intrusion of reality. I should go, he said reluctantly. I know, but neither of them moved. Tomorrow? He said. Just us. Maybe we could actually talk about this. I'd like that. He walked home feeling like he was standing on the edge of something significant. The kind of moment where one choice could change everything. For once, he wasn't interested in stepping back to safety. Emma chattered about her evening with her grandmother the whole drive home. But Daniel barely registered the words. His mind was already on tomorrow, on Lana, on the conversation they needed to have. That night, lying in bed, he stared at the ceiling and thought about timing. How he'd spent a decade convinced he'd missed his chance. How life had a way of circling back to the things you thought you'd lost. His phone lit up with a text from Lena. Still awake? Unfortunately, he typed back. Me too. Nervous about tomorrow. Why nervous? Because I really don't want to screw this up. You won't. How do you know? Because we already screwed it up once. We're older now, theoretically wiser. Theoretically? I'm hedging my bets. She sent a laughing emoji. Then, thank you for being patient with me while I figure out what I'm doing. Take all the time you need. I've waited 10 years. I can wait a little longer. You shouldn't have to wait at all. Tomorrow, he sent back. We'll figure it out tomorrow. Tomorrow. Good night, Daniel. Good night. He set his phone down and closed his eyes, letting himself imagine just for a moment what tomorrow might bring. Not the fantasy version he'd constructed years ago, but something real. Something possible. Something worth finally being brave enough to reach for. Outside, the neighborhood settled into silence. Across the street, in the house that had seemed like just another property until 3 weeks ago, Lena was probably lying awake too, thinking parallel thoughts. The timing had been wrong before, but maybe, just maybe, they were finally getting it right. Sunday morning arrived with rain that matched Daniel's nerves. He woke early, checked his phone 3 times before 7, and made coffee strong enough to strip paint. Emma had slept over at his mother's again, leaving the house too quiet and his thoughts too loud. The text from Lena came at 8. Coffee at my place? I made muffins. Well, I attempted muffins. He was across the street in 5 minutes, not bothering with an umbrella for the short dash. Lena opened the door before he could knock, her hair still wet from a shower, wearing sweatpants and an oversized shirt that might have belonged to someone else once. They're a little burnt on the bottom, she said, leading him to the kitchen where a plate of aggressively brown muffins sat on the counter. But the tops are edible. Daniel picked one up and took a bite. It was dry and somehow both undercooked in the middle and charred on the edges. It's terrible, he said honestly. I know. She laughed, the sound nervous and genuine. I don't know why I thought baking would impress you. You don't need to impress me. Old habits. She poured coffee into 2 mugs, her hands not quite steady. I spent 8 years trying to be the perfect wife. Turns out, I'm not very good at it. Maybe you were just married to the wrong person. The words hung between them while rain drummed against the windows. Lena set the coffee pot down carefully, like she was buying time to think. His name was Richard, she said finally. We met in grad school. He was getting his MBA while I was doing my master's in English. Everyone said we made sense together, practical and creative, balanced. What did you say? I said yes when he proposed because I was 26 and thought I was supposed to have my life figured out by then. She handed him a mug. What about you and Sarah? We met at a work conference. She was in pharmaceutical sales. I was just starting out in medical equipment. We talked for 3 hours about nothing important, and I thought that meant something. Did you love her? The question should have felt invasive, but coming from Lena, it just felt honest. I loved the idea of her, Daniel said. Or maybe I loved the idea of being someone who had his life together. Wife, house, kid on the way. All the boxes checked. But I don't think I ever really knew her, and she definitely didn't know me. He took a sip of coffee to give his hand something to do. The night she told me she was leaving, you know what she said? She said I was a good man, but she'd never felt like I was actually present, like I was always somewhere else in my head. Were you? Yeah, I was usually thinking about all the things I should have done differently, all the chances I didn't take. He met Lena's eyes, including you. She leaned against the counter, studying him with an intensity that made him feel exposed. I used to imagine what I'd say if I ever saw you again, she said quietly. I had this whole speech planned, how I'd be casual and sophisticated and prove I'd turned out fine without you. How's that working out? Terrible. I burned muffins and I've been awake since 5 because I kept rehearsing conversations in my head. What did you decide to say? That I'm tired of pretending I don't feel things just because they're inconvenient or complicated. She set down her mug. That I moved here partly because of the job, but also because when I was looking at places to live, I kept thinking about college and how I felt back then. Young and possible and like anything could happen. And then I turned out to be your neighbor. And then you turned out to be my neighbor. She smiled, but it was shaky around the edges. I'm not good at this, Daniel, the honest thing. I spent so long being what everyone expected that I'm not sure I know how to just be myself. You're doing fine. I'm really not. I'm standing here trying to figure out if I should tell you that I've thought about kissing you approximately 40 times in the past 3 weeks, or if that's too much too soon. Daniel's heart forgot how to beat properly. 40 seems specific. I counted. She wasn't laughing now. I thought maybe if I quantified it, it would feel less overwhelming. Did it work? No. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, the air between them charged with everything they weren't quite saying. Daniel set down his mug before he dropped it. I don't want to be another mistake for you, he said. You just got out of a marriage. You're rebuilding your life. The last thing you need is me complicating things. What if I want complicated? Lena, no, listen. She pushed away from the counter, closing the distance between them. I spent 8 years making the safe choice, the logical choice, and I was miserable. So maybe I don't want safe anymore. You have to be sure. I'm not sure about anything except that when I'm with you, I feel like myself for the first time in years. And that scares me, but not as much as the idea of walking away from it because I'm afraid. Daniel could smell her shampoo, something with lavender, could see the small scar above her left eyebrow that he'd noticed in college and never asked about. I'm not good at this either, he admitted. The last time I tried to tell someone how I felt, I ended up married to the wrong person for 5 years. Then maybe we can be bad at it together. She was close enough to touch now, and Daniel's hands itched to reach for her. But something held him back, some old instinct toward caution. I have Emma to think about, he said. If this goes wrong, I would never do anything to hurt her. I know that. But she's already lost her mother once. If she gets attached to you and then what? We're careful? We take it slow? Lena's voice softened. Daniel, I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm asking you to stop acting like we have to have everything figured out before we even try. The rain had picked up, battering the windows hard enough to rattle the glass. Daniel thought about timing, about all the years they'd lost because neither of them had been brave enough to say what they meant. "Okay," he said. "Okay. Let's be bad at this together." Lena's smile was worth every second of anxiety that had led to this moment. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers gentle against his jaw. "I'm going to kiss you now," she said, "unless you object." "No objections." Her lips met his, soft and tentative, like they were both remembering how to do this. Daniel's hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and the kiss deepened into something that felt both brand new and like coming home. When they finally broke apart, Lena was laughing. "What?" Daniel asked. "I just realized I've been waiting 10 years to do that." "How was it?" "Better than I imagined, and I have a very good imagination." They stood there in their kitchen, foreheads touching, while the rain created a cocoon of sound around them. Daniel felt something unknot in his chest, some tension he'd been carrying so long he'd forgotten it was there. "What happens now?" Lena asked. "I have no idea." "Good. Me neither." They spent the rest of the morning on her couch, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about her dissertation on modernist poetry and how she'd hated every minute of writing it. He told her about Emma's tendency to narrate her entire thought process out loud, and how he'd learned to just let her talk herself through problems. They ordered Chinese food when they realized neither of them had eaten lunch, and Lena burned her mouth on hot and sour soup while trying to explain why James Joyce was overrated. "You're wrong," Daniel said. "Ulysses is brilliant. Ulysses is pretentious garbage, and you only like it because your freshman lit professor told you to. I like it because it's innovative. It's unreadable. You just don't have the patience for it." She threw a fortune cookie at him. He caught it and cracked it open, reading the slip of paper inside. "Good things come to those who wait," he read aloud. "See? Even the fortune cookie agrees with me about Joyce. That's not what it means. Prove it." He kissed her instead of answering, and she tasted like soy sauce and something sweet. When his phone buzzed with a text from his mother saying she was bringing Emma home in an hour, Lena sighed against his mouth. "Reality," she murmured. "Unfortunately." "Does Emma know about us?" "There hasn't been an us until about 3 hours ago." "You know what I mean." Daniel sat back, running a hand through his hair. "She asked me last week if we were dating. I told her it was complicated." "What did she say?" "That complicated meant yes, and I was being weird about it." Rosalina laughed. "Smart kid." "Too smart sometimes." He checked the time. "I should go. Get the house ready. Make sure she has clean clothes for tomorrow." The glamorous life of single parenting. You have no idea. He stood, reluctant to leave. "Can I see you tomorrow?" "I have office hours until 6. After that, I'll make dinner, something that won't give you food poisoning." Setting the bar high, I see. He kissed her goodbye at the door, taking his time about it, trying to memorize the feel of her against him. When he finally pulled away, she was smiling. "Go," she said, "before your mother sends a search party." Daniel jogged back across the street through rain that had softened to a drizzle, feeling like he'd just stepped into a parallel universe where things actually worked out. His house felt different when he walked in, brighter somehow, like someone had adjusted the contrast on his life. He was folding laundry when his mother's car pulled into the driveway. Emma burst through the door, full of stories about baking cookies and watching movies, and Grandma's neighbor's new puppy. "Did you have fun with Miss Carter?" she asked once she'd run out of steam. "How did you—" "I saw your car across the street when we drove past this morning." Daniel should have known better than to think he could keep secrets in this neighborhood. "We had coffee," he said carefully. "Just coffee?" "And terrible muffins." Emma grinned. "So you're dating now?" "We're figuring things out." "That's a yes." "Emma—" "Dad, it's fine. I told you I like her." She flopped onto the couch. "Does this mean she'll come to my school play?" "What school play?" "The one I told you about last week. We're doing Alice in Wonderland, and I'm the Cheshire Cat." He had zero memory of this conversation. "When is it?" 3 weeks? I need a costume." "We'll figure it out." "Can Miss Carter help?" "She's good at creative stuff." The easy assumption in her voice that Lena would just be part of their lives now made Daniel's chest tight. "Maybe." If she has time. She'll have time. She likes me. Emma's confidence was simultaneously reassuring and terrifying. She'd already mapped out a future that included Lena, built a structure that depended on this fragile new thing not falling apart. That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel sat on his back porch with a beer he wasn't drinking and thought about responsibility. He'd spent 3 years building a stable life for his daughter after Sarah left. Predictable routines, consistent schedules, nothing that would shake the foundation he'd carefully constructed. Lena was definitely going to shake the foundation. His phone buzzed, a text from her. Emma home safe? Sound asleep. Apparently I'm supposed to make her a Cheshire Cat costume. I'm good with a sewing machine if you need help. You sew? I contain multitudes. He smiled at the phone like an idiot. Tomorrow night, my place. 6:30? It's a date. Officially? Officially. Daniel finished his beer and went inside, checking on Emma one more time before bed. She was sprawled across her mattress with the abandon of someone who felt safe in the world. He'd done that, at least, given her stability and security and the knowledge that she was loved. Now he just had to figure out how to make room for something else without disrupting what he'd built. The next few weeks developed a rhythm that felt both natural and surreal. Lena came for dinner on Monday nights, helped Emma with a social studies project about state capitals. Daniel went to her place on Wednesdays after Emma was asleep, his mother having agreed to be on call in case of emergencies. They stole moments in between, coffee before work, texts throughout the day, quick conversations across the street when they were both checking mail. It was working. Against all odds and his better judgment, it was actually working. Until the morning Lena's ex-husband showed up. Daniel was leaving for work when he saw the man on Lena's porch. Tall, expensive suit, the kind of confident posture that came from never having been told no. He was holding flowers, talking to Lena through the screen door she hadn't opened. Every instinct told Daniel to go over there, but he forced himself to get in his car instead. This wasn't his business. Lena could handle her own life. He made it halfway to the office before turning around. When he pulled back into his driveway, the man was still there, but Lena had come outside. They were standing close together, his hand on her arm, her body language rigid. Daniel crossed the street. "Everything okay?" he asked. The man turned, sizing him up with a glance that probably worked in boardrooms, but just made Daniel's jaw tighten. "I'm having a private conversation with my wife," the man said. "Ex-wife," Lena corrected, her voice sharp. "Richard, this is Daniel, my neighbor." "Neighbor?" Richard smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Right." Daniel, you should go," Lena said. "I've got this." "You sure?" "I'm sure." He went, but slowly, making sure Richard saw him looking back. When he got inside his house, he watched through the window as they talked for another 10 minutes. Richard's body language getting more animated, Lena's getting smaller. Then Richard left, getting into a Mercedes that probably cost more than Daniel made in a year. Lena stood on her porch for a long moment before going inside. Daniel gave her 30 minutes before texting. "You okay?" The response took 5 minutes. "Been better." "Want company?" "Not right now. Tomorrow?" "Tomorrow." He went to work distracted, botched a presentation to a hospital purchasing committee, and drove home thinking about the way Lena's shoulders had hunched when Richard touched her arm. Emma was at a friend's house for a playdate, so the evening stretched empty and anxious. He tried to focus on paperwork, gave up, and was contemplating whether checking on Lena would be supportive or overbearing when his doorbell rang. She stood on his porch, eyes red, makeup smudged. "He wants me back," she said without preamble. "He showed up with flowers and apologies and a whole speech about how he's changed and we should try again." Daniel stepped aside to let her in. "What did you say?" "I told him no. Obviously, I told him no." She paced his living room like a caged animal. "But he doesn't believe me. He thinks I'm just angry and I need time to cool off." "Are you? Angry?" "I'm furious, but not because I want him back, because he thinks he can just show up and I'll forget 8 years of feeling invisible." She stopped pacing, looking at Daniel with something desperate in her eyes. "He said I was making a mistake, that I'd regret throwing away everything we built together." "Do you think you are? Making a mistake?" "No. But what if he's right about the regret? What if I'm running away from one thing and straight into another disaster?" The question hit harder than she probably intended. Is that what this is? A disaster? No, I didn't mean... She pressed her hands to her face. I don't know what I mean. He just got in my head and now I can't think straight. Daniel wanted to pull her into his arms, promise her everything would be fine, make guarantees he had no business making. Instead, he sat down on the couch and waited until she sat beside him. What do you want? He asked quietly. I want to not feel like I'm constantly making the wrong choice. That's not what I asked. She looked at him, and he could see her working through it, fighting against years of learned behavior that told her to smooth things over and make everyone else comfortable. I want to be with you, she said finally. I want to stop being afraid that everything good in my life is temporary. I want to believe that I deserve to be happy. You do deserve it. How do you know? Because I've spent the last month with you, and I've seen who you are when you're not trying to be what someone else needs, and that person is pretty remarkable. Lena's laugh was wet and broken. You're biased. Extremely. He took her hand, but that doesn't make it less true. They sat in silence while the house settled around them. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights sweeping across the wall. He's staying in town for a few days, Lena said. At the Marriott. He wants to have dinner, talk things through properly. Are you going to? I don't know. Part of me thinks I owe him that much. We were married for 8 years. You don't owe him anything. Maybe not. But I owe myself some closure. She squeezed his hand. Does that make sense? It didn't, not really, but Daniel had learned enough to know that sometimes people needed to do things that didn't make logical sense. If you need to have that conversation, have it, he said. But don't let him convince you that what you want doesn't matter. I won't. Promise me. I promise. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Can I stay here for a while? I don't want to go home yet. Stay as long as you want. They ended up watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures that neither of them paid attention to. Lena fell asleep halfway through, her breathing evening out against his shoulder. Daniel sat very still, afraid to wake her, thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. When Emma came home an hour later, full of stories about the playdate, she stopped short at the sight of Lena asleep on the couch. Is she okay? She whispered. Rough day, Daniel whispered back. Should we let her sleep? Probably. But Lena stirred at their voices, blinking herself awake. Sorry, I didn't mean to crash. You're fine, Emma said. Dad lets me sleep on the couch all the time. Does he? Only on weekends, Daniel clarified. Lena sat up, rubbing her eyes. I should go. You could stay for dinner, Emma offered. We're having spaghetti. Dad makes it with the sauce from the jar, but he adds extra garlic so it's better. Quite the endorsement, Lena said, smiling despite everything. They ate together, Emma carrying most of the conversation with the story about her friend's rabbit who escaped and was found 2 streets over eating someone's garden. Lena laughed in the right places and asked follow-up questions, but Daniel could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept checking her phone. After Emma went upstairs to start her homework, Lena helped Daniel with the dishes. He texted, she said quietly, wants to have lunch tomorrow. What are you going to do? Say yes, probably. Get it over with. You don't have to justify it to me. I feel like I do. She dried a plate with more force than necessary. I feel like I'm doing exactly what I said I wouldn't do, letting him back in. Having lunch isn't letting him back in. It's just lunch. You really believe that? Daniel turned off the water and faced her. I believe you're strong enough to have a conversation with your ex-husband without losing yourself in the process. And I believe that whatever you decide, you're doing it for the right reasons. What if I'm not? What if I'm just scared of being alone? Are you alone right now? The question made her stop. She set down the dish towel and looked at him properly. No, she said, I'm not. Then maybe that's your answer. She kissed him there in his kitchen with soap still on her hands, and it felt like a promise or maybe a plea. When she pulled away, her eyes were wet again. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For not making this harder than it already is. She left soon after, and Daniel finished cleaning up while trying not to think about her sitting across from Richard at some restaurant, listening to carefully rehearsed apologies and promises of change. He trusted Lena, but he also knew how persuasive someone could be when they wanted something badly enough. The next day crawled past with the speed of continental drift. Daniel checked his phone every 15 minutes, resisted the urge to text Lena, and generally failed at focusing on anything productive. His mother called during lunch. "I heard Lena's ex-husband is in town," she said. "How do you possibly know that?" "Linda Pemberton saw him at Lena's house yesterday morning. Nice car," she said. "Expensive suit." "Is there anything Linda Pemberton doesn't see?" "She's very observant. Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "Daniel?" "Mom, I'm fine. Lena's having lunch with him to get some closure. It's healthy." "Is it?" "That's what I'm telling myself." His mother sighed. "You really care about her." "I really do." "Then fight for her." I'm not saying interfere. I'm saying make sure she knows what she has with you. Don't assume she knows how you feel." After they hung up, Daniel sat at his desk thinking about all the times he'd assumed people knew how he felt instead of actually saying it. How he'd spent 2 years in college never telling Lena he cared about her. How he'd gone through a marriage without ever really expressing what he needed. At 3 o'clock, his phone finally buzzed. "Lena." "Lunch is over. Can I come by tonight?" "Daniel." "Anytime." She showed up at 7 after Emma was in bed reading. Daniel had spent the intervening hours oscillating between hope and dread, trying to prepare himself for whatever she was about to say. "He offered me everything," Lena said once they were settled on his porch with glasses of wine neither of them was drinking. "Couples therapy, a fresh start, moving wherever I wanted. He had answers for every objection I've ever raised." Daniel's stomach dropped. "That's good." "It's what I wanted to hear 3 years ago, maybe even 1 year ago." She turned to look at him. But sitting there listening to him, all I could think about was how exhausting it would be. Having to explain myself constantly, negotiate for basic respect, pretend that grand gestures made up for fundamental incompatibility. "What did you tell him?" "That I appreciated him coming, but my answer was still no. That I hoped he found what he was looking for, but it wasn't going to be with me." She took a shaky breath. "He didn't take it well." "What did he do?" "Nothing dramatic, just this look, like I'd confirmed something he'd suspected all along, that I wasn't worth the effort after all." Her voice cracked. "And the worst part is I almost believed him. I almost got back in my car thinking maybe I was throwing away my last chance at making it work with someone." "But you didn't." "No, because I drove past your house on the way home and saw Emma's bike in the driveway and that ridiculous lawn gnome your mother gave you. And I thought about Sunday mornings and terrible muffins and how you look at me like I'm not a problem that needs fixing." Daniel reached for her hand. "You're not a problem." "I know. That's what I'm trying to tell you." She turned to face him fully. "I'm done with men who see me as a project. Done with relationships where I have to diminish myself to make someone else comfortable. If I'm going to do this, I want it to be with someone who sees me and doesn't flinch." "I'm not flinching." "I can see that." She squeezed his hand. "So here's what I need to know. Are you all in on this, or are you just seeing where it goes?" The question deserved honesty. "I'm terrified," Daniel admitted, "of messing this up, of hurting Emma if it doesn't work, of finding out I'm just as bad at this as I was the first time around. But yeah, I'm all in, have been since you showed up in my driveway blocking my car." Lena's smile was tremulous but real. "Good, because I'm all in too. Even though we have no idea what we're doing. Especially because of that." She leaned in and kissed him, and it felt different than before. More certain, less like testing the waters, and more like diving in. When they finally broke apart, Daniel said, "Richard was wrong, by the way, about you not being worth the effort." "How do you know?" "Because loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done." Lena's breath hitched. "That's the first time you've said that." "Said what?" "That you love me." He hadn't even realized he'd said it, but looking at her now, he knew it was true. Had probably always been true. "I do," he said simply. "Love you." "I love you too." She laughed, wiping at her eyes. "We're doing this, aren't we? Actually doing this." "Looks like it." "No more wondering what if." "No more." They sat together on his porch while the night deepened around them, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, Daniel felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The timing had finally worked out, and it was better than anything he'd imagined during those long years of waiting. The following morning arrived with the kind of clarity that comes after making a decision you've been avoiding for years. Daniel woke before his alarm, sunlight cutting through the blinds in sharp lines, and for once didn't immediately start running through his mental checklist of everything that could go wrong. Emma was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with her cereal, scrolling through something on the tablet she was only supposed to use for homework. "You're up early," Daniel said, starting the coffee maker. "Couldn't sleep. Too excited about the play." She didn't look up from the screen. "Ms. Carter said she'd help with my costume this weekend. Is that still happening?" "Far as I know." "Good, because I have ideas." Now she looked up, her expression suddenly serious. "She's staying, right?" "Miss Carter." "She's not going to leave like Mom did." The question hit Daniel square in the chest. He poured his coffee slowly, buying time to figure out how to answer honestly without making promises he couldn't keep. "People don't always stay," he said carefully. "You know that. But Lena's not your mom. She's different." "How?" "She wants to be here, and she's not going anywhere right now." "But what about later?" Daniel sat down across from her. "What's this really about?" Emma pushed her cereal around the bowl. "Madison's dad has a new girlfriend, and Madison says she's nice, but she's worried she'll leave too, and then her dad will be sad again. And I was thinking about how you're happy now with Miss Carter, but what if she leaves and you're sad?" "I might be," Daniel admitted. "That's how caring about people works. Sometimes they leave, and it hurts." "So why do it?" "Because the alternative is not caring about anyone, and that's worse." Emma considered this with the gravity of someone much older. "I guess that makes sense." "Besides," Daniel added, "Lena's not planning on going anywhere. We talked about it." "You did?" "Last night, after you went to bed." "What did you talk about?" "Grown-up stuff." "Dad." "We talked about how we feel about each other, and how we want to make this work." Emma's face lit up. "So you're like officially together, like boyfriend and girlfriend?" "Something like that." "That's so weird." "You're too old for boyfriend and girlfriend." "Thanks for that." "But good weird," Emma clarified. "I like her. She doesn't treat me like a little kid." "You are a little kid. I'm 8 3/4. That's practically 9. Daniel hid his smile behind his coffee mug. "My mistake." They finished breakfast and went through their morning routine, but everything felt slightly different now that he'd said the words out loud to Lena. "I love you." 3 words that had felt impossible a month ago and inevitable last night. At work, he found himself actually smiling during a meeting about inventory management, which earned him a weird look from his colleague Janet. "What's going on with you?" she asked afterward. "You look almost happy." "I might be." "It's disturbing. Stop it." His phone buzzed with a text from Lena. "Coffee after work?" "I need to tell you something." The words sent a small spike of anxiety through him despite everything they'd said last night. He typed back, "Everything okay?" "Yes, just want to talk." They met at the coffee place downtown that Emma had declared was better than the chain shops because they had real art on the walls. Lena was already there when Daniel arrived, sitting in the corner with 2 cups in front of her. "I got you the usual," she said as he slid into the seat across from her. "Also, I'm nervous, and I've been here for 20 minutes. "Nervous about what?" "I got a call this morning from Richard's lawyer." She wrapped both hands around her cup. "The divorce settlement included the house we bought together. I signed it over to him because I didn't want to fight about it, and I just wanted out. But apparently there's some issue with the paperwork, and they need me to sign additional documents." "Okay?" "The thing is, I have to go back to Connecticut, just for a few days to handle it in person." Daniel's chest tightened. "When?" "This weekend. I know the timing is terrible with Emma's play coming up, and I promised to help with the costume, but the lawyer says if I don't handle it now, the whole settlement could be delayed for months." "Emma will understand." "Will she?" Lena's eyes were worried. "I don't want her to think I'm bailing on her." "She won't think that." "How do you know?" "Because I'll make sure she knows you're coming back." Daniel reached across the table for her hand. "You are coming back, right?" "Of course I am. This is my home now, my job, my life, you and Emma." She squeezed his hand. "But I hate that I have to go back there at all. It feels like being pulled backward when I'm finally moving forward." "It's just paperwork, a few days." "I know, but what if I get there and..." She stopped, shaking her head. Never mind, that's stupid. What? What if I get there and it all comes rushing back, the reasons I stayed so long, the good times before everything went wrong? What if being in that space makes me doubt everything I've built here? Daniel understood the fear because he felt it too, that constant low-grade anxiety that good things were always temporary. Then you call me, he said, and I'll remind you why you left. What if that's not enough? It will be, because you're not the same person who lived in that house with him. You're different now. How do you know? Because the Lena I knew in college would never have walked away from something that looked perfect on paper, and the Lena sitting across from me now did exactly that. She smiled, but it was fragile. I'm scared. I know, but you're also brave enough to do this anyway. They sat there until their coffee went cold, talking through logistics and concerns and all the small anxieties that accumulated when you cared about something enough to worry about losing it. When Daniel finally walked her back to her car, she held on to him longer than usual. 3 days, she said against his shoulder. 4 at most. I'll be here when you get back. Promise? Promise. He watched her drive away, then sat in his own car for a long moment before starting the engine. The rational part of his brain knew this was fine, just a necessary trip to handle legal paperwork. But the part that had spent 10 years thinking he'd missed his chance was already catastrophizing every possible outcome. Emma took the news better than he'd expected that evening. That's okay, she said when he explained that Lena had to go out of town. We can work on the costume when she gets back. I have 3 weeks still. You're not disappointed? A little, but she has to do grown-up stuff sometimes. Emma looked at him seriously. You're worried she won't come back. What makes you say that? You have your worried face on, the one you get when you think something bad might happen. Daniel wondered when his 8-year-old had learned to read him so well. I'm not worried. Dad? Okay, maybe a little worried. Why? She said she's coming back. Sometimes people change their minds. Emma climbed onto the couch next to him. Mom changed her mind about us. But that's because she wanted different things. Miss Carter likes it here. She told me the other day that this is the first place that's felt like home in years. She said that? Yeah, when we were making those bracelets. I asked her if she missed her old house, and she said no, because that house never felt like hers. But this neighborhood does. Daniel pulled his daughter close, grateful for her unexpected wisdom. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't always notice. Lena left Friday morning. Daniel saw her loading a suitcase into her car around 6, before Emma was even awake. He thought about going over, saying goodbye properly, but decided against it. They'd already said everything that needed saying. His phone buzzed an hour later. Made it to the airport. Miss you already. Miss you too. Safe flight. The weekend stretched out empty despite Emma's presence. They went to the park, visited the library, made cookies that turned out better than expected. But Daniel found himself checking his phone constantly, waiting for updates from Lena that arrived in sporadic bursts. Saturday afternoon. Landed. Everything looked smaller than I remembered. Saturday evening. Had dinner with my lawyer. Paperwork is more complicated than they said. Might need an extra day. Sunday morning. Woke up in my hotel room and forgot where I was for a second. This place doesn't feel real anymore. Sunday evening brought a phone call instead of a text. Daniel was making dinner, Emma was doing homework at the kitchen table, and he almost didn't hear the phone over the sound of water boiling. Hey, Lena's voice sounded tired. Is this a bad time? Never. Hold on. He stepped into the living room. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong exactly, just weird. I went by the house today. Our old house. Richard's house now, I guess. Daniel's stomach tightened. Why? I left some books in the garage and he said I could pick them up while I was in town, so I went over there this afternoon. She paused, and he could hear traffic in the background. It was so strange, Daniel. Walking through rooms where I lived for 8 years and feeling absolutely nothing, like they belonged to someone else's life. Is that bad? No. It's good, I think. But also disorienting. Like I spent so much energy leaving that place behind, and now that I'm back, I can't even remember why it mattered so much. Because it was your life, of course it mattered. But it's not my life anymore. This sounds crazy, But standing in that kitchen where I made 1,000 meals, all I could think about was your kitchen, and Emma's art projects on your fridge, and how your coffee maker makes that weird grinding sound every morning. Daniel's chest loosened slightly. That's not crazy. Richard was there just for a minute when I was leaving. He looked at me like he was waiting for something, like if he was patient enough, I'd realize I'd made a mistake and come back. What did you do? I thanked him for the books and left, but Daniel, the look on his face, her voice cracked. He really thought I'd come back, and part of me felt guilty for not even being tempted. You shouldn't feel guilty for knowing what you want. I know, but 8 years is a long time to spend with someone. Shouldn't I feel more? Grief or loss or something other than relief? Maybe relief is what you're supposed to feel. Maybe, she sighed. I should let you go. I'm being dramatic. You're not, and I'm glad you called. I needed to hear your voice, needed the reminder that I have something to come home to. You do. We're right here. After they hung up, Daniel stood in his living room feeling the weight of everything she hadn't said. The doubt, the guilt, the fear that she was making another mistake just in a different direction. Emma appeared in the doorway. Is she okay? She's fine, just tired. You look worried again. I'm fine too. Dad, she's coming back. Stop freaking out. I'm not freaking out. Emma rolled her eyes with the exasperation of someone dealing with a particularly difficult child. Whatever you say. Monday morning brought rain and a text from Lena. Signing papers today. Should be done by afternoon. Flying home tomorrow. Daniel sent back a thumbs-up emoji, then immediately regretted it because it felt too casual. He typed out 3 different follow-up messages before deleting them all and putting his phone away. Work dragged. He sat through a product demonstration that might as well have been conducted in a foreign language for all the attention he paid. Janet cornered him at lunch. Okay, spill, she said. Last week you were all smiles. This week you look like someone killed your dog. I don't have a dog. You know what I mean? What happened? Daniel considered deflecting, but Janet had a way of seeing through his evasions. The woman I'm seeing had to go back to Connecticut to handle some divorce paperwork. She's coming back tomorrow. Okay, so what's the problem? No problem. Daniel, I'm worried she's going to realize she made a mistake. That this thing between us isn't real or isn't enough, or that she's just running away from her old life instead of running towards something new. Janet took a bite of her sandwich, chewing thoughtfully. Has she given you any reason to think that? No. Then why are you inventing reasons to panic? Because last time I thought something was working out, my wife left me for someone else. Okay, first of all, Sarah was never right for you, and you know it. Second, this woman sounds different. She is different. Then trust that. Trust her. Trust yourself. Janet pointed at him with a carrot stick. You know what your problem is? You're so busy waiting for things to go wrong that you can't enjoy when they're going right. She wasn't wrong. Daniel had spent most of his adult life braced for disappointment, building safety nets and backup plans for every possible failure. It was exhausting. That evening, Emma cornered him again. I have an idea, she announced. Should I be worried? We should do something special for when Ms. Carter gets back, like a welcome home thing. What kind of thing? I don't know, a party? Or maybe we could make her dinner, the good kind, not the jar sauce kind. The jar sauce is perfectly fine. Dad, it's from a jar. We can do better. Emma was already pulling out her tablet, searching for recipes with the focused intensity she usually reserved for videos about hamsters. Look, this one says it's easy. Chicken parmesan. We just need chicken and cheese and breadcrumbs and Emma, slow down. She's been gone for days handling boring adult stuff. We should do something nice. Daniel looked at his daughter, at the excitement in her eyes, and felt something shift. Emma wasn't worried Lena would leave. She was planning a future that included all 3 of them. Okay, he said, let's do it. But we're making a grocery list first. They spent the next hour planning a menu that was probably too ambitious but felt right anyway. Emma insisted on making a welcome home banner, which devolved into an argument about whether glitter was necessary. Glitter is always necessary, Emma argued. Glitter gets everywhere and never comes out. That's what makes it special. They compromised on minimal glitter, which in Emma's world still meant enough to cover the kitchen table in sparkly chaos. Daniel cleaned up while Emma worked on her banner, feeling slightly less anxious than he had all weekend. His phone buzzed around 9. Papers signed, all official, flying out at 10 a.m. tomorrow, home by dinner. Emma's making you a welcome home banner. Fair warning, there's glitter. I love glitter. You say that now. Daniel? Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on me this weekend. I wasn't going to give up on you. I know, but thank you anyway. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of nervous energy that made it impossible to focus. Daniel sent Emma to school with the lunch he'd probably forgotten half the components of, then spent the day at work accomplishing almost nothing productive. Lena's flight was supposed to land at 3. She'd texted from the airport, then during the layover, then when she was boarding. Daniel tracked every update like it was life or death information. At 5:30, he was in his kitchen attempting the chicken parmesan with Emma, supervising like a particularly demanding cooking show host. You need to pound it flatter, Emma instructed. I'm pounding it. Flatter. If I pound it any flatter, it'll be chicken paper. Emma giggled. That's not a thing. They were arguing about proper breadcrumb coating technique when Daniel saw a headlight sweep across the living room wall. His heart rate kicked up as he moved to the window. Lena's car pulled into her driveway. She sat there for a moment before getting out, stretching like someone who'd spent too many hours in uncomfortable airplane seats. Then she looked across the street, straight at his house, and smiled. Daniel was halfway out the door before he remembered he was covered in breadcrumbs and probably smelled like raw chicken. Lena met him in the middle of the street. Hi, she said. Hi. They stood there like idiots, grinning at each other. I missed you, Daniel said. I missed you too, so much. How was it, really? Hard, but clarifying. She glanced at her house, then back at him. I kept thinking about this moment, coming home, and every time I pictured it, I pictured you and Emma and this street. Not Connecticut, not my old life. Just this. This works for me. Emma appeared on the porch, still wearing her makeshift chef's apron. Ms. Carter, you're back. I'm back. Is that glitter I see from here? There might be some glitter involved. Lena laughed, and the sound was like everything clicking back into place. Can I see this banner? Only if you promise to act surprised. Deal. They crossed the street together, Emma chattering about the welcome home preparations while Daniel carried Lena's suitcase. Inside, the kitchen was a disaster of breading stations and pasta water, but the banner Emma had made was stretched across the archway, covered in uneven letters and strategic glitter placement. Welcome home, Lena, it read, with stars drawn in various colors around the words. It's perfect, Lena said, and her voice was thick. Don't cry, Emma said. You'll make the glitter run. Glitter doesn't run. Well, you'll make me cry, and that's worse. They ate dinner together, the chicken parmesan slightly overcooked but edible, and Lena told them about signing papers and seeing her old neighborhood and how strange it felt to close that chapter officially. It's done, she said. All of it. The divorce, the settlement, everything. I'm legally and officially free. How does it feel? Daniel asked. Terrifying and wonderful. She reached for his hand across the table, but mostly wonderful. After Emma went to bed, they sat on the couch with wine and the comfortable silence of people who'd spent days apart and were just happy to be in the same room again. I need to tell you something, Lena said. Daniel's stomach clenched. Okay. When I was there in Connecticut, Richard asked to meet one more time, coffee, nothing formal, and I went. Why? Because I needed to hear what he had to say, needed to know I wasn't making a mistake by walking away. And he told me he was sorry, that he'd taken me for granted, that he'd been so focused on his career and what he thought we should be, that he never asked what I actually wanted, and he was right about all of it. Daniel waited, heart pounding. But then he said that if I came back, we could start over. Do it right this time. And I realized something. She turned to face him fully. I don't want to do it right with him. I don't want to fix something that was broken from the start. I want to build something new with someone who sees me as I am right now, not as a project or a role to fill. I see you, Daniel said quietly. I know you do. That's why I'm here. That's why when he was talking about second chances and fresh starts, all I could think about was getting back to you and Emma and this life I'm building. You told him that. I told him I was in love with someone else, that I'd always been in love with someone else, even before I met him. I just didn't know it yet. She smiled. He didn't take it well. I imagine not. But Daniel, I need you to understand something. I'm not choosing you because you're safe or convenient or because you were there when things fell apart with Richard. I'm choosing you because you're the person I want. The person I've always wanted, even when I was too scared to admit it. The words landed like a promise, heavy and real. I spent 10 years thinking I'd missed my chance with you, Daniel said. And then you showed up blocking my driveway, and it was like the universe was giving me another shot. But I've been so afraid of screwing it up that I keep waiting for you to realize you could do better. Better than what? Than a man who sees me as an actual person instead of an accessory to his life? Than someone who lets me be messy and uncertain and human? She shook her head. There is no better, Daniel. There's just you. He kissed her then, deep and certain, pouring 10 years of longing into it. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Stay, he said. Tonight, stay with me. Emma's upstairs. I know, but stay anyway. I don't want you to leave. Lena smiled. Neither do I. They fell asleep on the couch, tangled together like teenagers who couldn't bear to be apart. And when Daniel woke just before dawn with his neck cramped and his arm numb, he couldn't remember ever being more content. Lena was still asleep, her face peaceful in the early light, and Daniel let himself just look at her. This woman who'd walked back into his life and changed everything without even trying. The universe had terrible timing, he thought, but occasionally, just occasionally, it got things exactly right. Emma found them on the couch the next morning, still tangled together under the throw blanket Daniel kept draped over the back. She stood in the doorway holding her breakfast bowl, staring at them with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read when he blinked awake. Morning, he said, his voice rough with sleep. Morning. Emma didn't move. Is Ms. Carter living here now? Lena stirred, lifting her head from Daniel's shoulder. No, sweetheart, I just fell asleep. I should probably go home and change for work. But you could live here, Emma said. If you wanted to. We have an extra bedroom. Emma, Daniel warned. What? We do. Lena sat up, smoothing her hair. That's very sweet of you, but I like my house, and your dad and I are taking things slow. You don't look like you're taking things slow. Okay, that's enough. Daniel stood, his back protesting from a night on the couch. Go finish your breakfast. We need to leave in 20 minutes. Emma retreated to the kitchen, but not before shooting them a look that suggested she wasn't fooled by anything they were saying. I should go, Lena said, gathering her shoes, before your daughter starts planning our wedding. Too late for that, probably. Is it weird that she's so okay with this? She's 8. Everything is weird at 8. Daniel walked Lena to the door. But yeah, she's been rooting for us since before there was an us to root for. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. Lena kissed him quickly, then headed across the street to her own house. Daniel watched her go, then turned to find Emma standing behind him. You're doing the face again, she said. What face? The happy face. The one that makes you look less old. I'm 32. That's not old. It's pretty old. They drove to school with Emma chattering about the play rehearsal that afternoon and how Mrs. Patterson said her Cheshire cat smile was getting really good. Daniel listened with half his attention, the other half stuck on the way Lena had looked sleeping on his couch, peaceful and present, and exactly where she belonged. Work was a blur of meetings he barely registered. His phone buzzed around noon with a text from his mother. Heard Lena's back from Connecticut. How did it go? Fine. She signed the papers. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. Daniel Hayes, don't make me come over there. He smiled despite himself. Everything's good, Mom. Better than good? Good. Now stop being cryptic and tell me when I can meet her properly. Not just neighborly waves across the street. Soon. That's what you said last week. I mean it this time. His mother sent back a skeptical emoji, but let it drop. Daniel pocketed his phone and tried to focus on the inventory report in front of him, but his mind kept drifting to Lena and the way she'd said she'd always been in love with him, even when she didn't know it yet. The afternoon crawled by until finally it was time to pick up Emma from rehearsal. She bounced out of the school full of energy, her striped shirt already on backwards in preparation for being the Cheshire Cat. "Mrs. Patterson says I need whiskers," she announced. "Can Ms. Carter do face paint?" "I have no idea. You could ask her." "Can we go over there now?" "She might still be at work, honey." But when they pulled into the driveway, Lena's car was already there. She was sitting on her porch with a stack of papers, a red pen moving steadily across the page. Emma was out of the car before Daniel had fully stopped. "Miss Carter, I need whiskers." Lena looked up, smiling. "For the play?" "Yeah, Mrs. Patterson says Cheshire Cats need really good whiskers. Can you do face paint?" "I can try, though I should warn you, my artistic skills are limited to stick figures." "That's okay. Dads are worse." "Thanks for that," Daniel said, joining them on the porch. Lena gathered her papers. "Come on, I might have some makeup we can experiment with." They ended up in Lena's bathroom, Emma perched on the counter while Lena carefully drew whiskers with an eyeliner pencil. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, watching them work together with an ease that felt both new and ancient. "Hold still," Lena instructed. "These need to be symmetrical." "What's symmetrical?" "Even on both sides." "Why does it matter? I'm a cat. Cats don't care about symmetry." "The audience cares." "The audience is just other kids' parents. They don't care either." Lena laughed, stepping back to examine her work. "What do you think?" Emma turned to the mirror, grinning wide. The whiskers were a little wobbly but charming, 3 black lines on each cheek curving up toward her temples. "I look awesome," Emma declared. "You look like a cat who got into the makeup," Daniel said. "Same thing." They spent the next hour at Lena's house, Emma practicing her Cheshire Cat smile, while Daniel helped Lena grade papers from her Composition 101 class. The essays were predictably terrible, full of meandering arguments and citations from Wikipedia. "This one thinks Emily Dickinson and Charles Dickens are the same person," Lena said, showing him a particularly egregious paragraph. "Maybe they are. Have you ever seen them in the same room?" "You're not helping." "I'm providing moral support." "You're distracting me." "Also not helping?" She kissed him, and Emma made exaggerated gagging sounds from across the room. "You guys are gross," Emma announced. "You're just jealous," Lena said. "Of what? Kissing? That's literally the grossest thing ever. Wait until you're older. I'm never going to think kissing is not gross." Daniel caught Lena's eye, and they both smiled, sharing the private knowledge that Emma absolutely would change her mind about that eventually. They ordered pizza for dinner, ate it on Lena's living room floor because her dining table was still covered in unpacked boxes, and Emma fell asleep halfway through a movie about talking dogs. Daniel carried her across the street to their house, tucked her into bed with the whiskers still on her face, and came back to find Lena cleaning up paper plates. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know, but if I don't, I'll just leave them here for 3 days." She tied off the trash bag. "Want to help me unpack some of these boxes? I've been avoiding it." They worked in comfortable silence, pulling out books and kitchen supplies and picture frames that showed Lena's past life. There was a photo of her graduation, young and hopeful. Another of her with a group of women Daniel didn't recognize, all of them laughing at something off camera. "My grad school friends," Lena said, noticing him looking. "We were supposed to stay in touch. We didn't." "That happens." "Yeah, but it's still sad." She set the frame on a shelf. "I keep wondering if I should reach out, tell them about the divorce and the move and you, but then I think about explaining everything and it feels exhausting." "You don't owe anyone explanations." "I know, but I also don't want to be someone who just disappears from people's lives without a word." "You're not disappearing, you're just moving forward." She pulled out another frame, this one showing her and Richard on their wedding day. They looked happy, or at least like they were performing happiness for the camera. Lena stared at it for a long moment. "I should throw this away," she said, "or put it in storage. You were married for 8 years. That's not nothing." "It feels like nothing now." "But it wasn't, not then." Daniel took the frame from her. "You don't have to erase your past to build a future." "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher. My therapist after Sarah left made me keep photos of our wedding up for 6 months. Said I needed to acknowledge what I'd lost before I could move on." "Did it work?" Not really, but I understand the theory. He set the frame in a box they designated for storage. You don't have to decide right now. Just pack it away and deal with it when you're ready. They finished unpacking the living room boxes, and Lena's house started looking less like a temporary way station and more like a home. She'd hung art on the walls, arranged books on the shelves, put out small touches that made the space distinctly hers. It's starting to feel real, she said, looking around, like I actually live here. You do live here. I know, but for a while it felt like I was playing house. Like any minute I'd wake up and be back in Connecticut, back in that life. And now? Now I can't imagine being anywhere else. She turned to him. That's because of you, you and Emma. You made this feel like home. Daniel pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. I'm glad you're here. Me too. They stood like that for a while, just breathing together, until Lena's phone buzzed on the counter. She pulled away to check it, and Daniel saw her expression change. What's wrong? He asked. It's Richard. She was reading the text, her jaw tight. He says we need to talk, that there's something I should know before I make any final decisions. What kind of something? He doesn't say. Just that it's important and I should call him tonight. Daniel's stomach nodded. Are you going to? I don't know. Part of me thinks it's just another manipulation. But what if it's actually important? What could be important enough that he couldn't have mentioned it while you were there? I don't know. Maybe something about the settlement or the house? She paced to the window, staring out at the dark street. Or maybe he's just trying to get me on the phone so he can make one more pitch for why I should come back. You don't have to call him. You don't owe him anything. But what if I regret it? What if there's something I actually need to know and I ignore it because I'm too stubborn to talk to him? Then he can put it in an email like a normal person. Lena laughed, but it was strained. You're right. I'm overthinking this. Or you could call him. Get it over with. I'll be right here. She considered this, chewing on her lower lip. Would you mind? I feel like I'm dragging you into my mess. It's not a mess. It's just life. And I'm already in it. Okay? She took a breath. Okay. I'll call him. But if he starts his usual thing, I'm hanging up. Deal. Lena dialed, putting the phone on speaker so Daniel could hear. Richard answered on the second ring, his voice smooth and professional like he was taking a business call. Lena, thanks for calling back. What do you want, Richard? I'm busy. Right to the point. That's new. I don't have time for games. You said there was something important. A pause. Then, I wanted to tell you before you heard it from someone else. I'm seeing someone. The words hung in the air. Daniel watched Lena's face, trying to gauge her reaction. Okay, Lena said slowly. Good for you. Her name is Michelle. We met at a work conference last month. It's nothing serious yet, but I thought you should know. Why? We're divorced, Richard. You don't need my permission to date. I know that. But given how things ended between us, I wanted to be upfront. I don't want you thinking I'm trying to make you jealous or playing games. I don't think that. Good. Because I'm not. I'm actually happy, Lena, for the first time in a long time. There was something in his voice that sounded genuine, and Daniel saw Lena's shoulders relax slightly. I'm happy for you, she said, and meant it. Really, you deserve to be happy. So do you. Are you happy? Yeah, I am. Good. That's good. Another pause. The guy you mentioned, the one you said you've always been in love with, is it serious? Very serious. Then I'm happy for you too. Even if it kills me a little to say it. Lena smiled. You'll survive. I'm starting to think I will. Richard's voice softened. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. For not being what you needed. For taking so long to realize it. I'm sorry too. For staying when I should have left sooner. For both of us. Yeah, well. Richard cleared his throat. I should let you go. Take care of yourself, Lena. You too, Richard. She hung up and stood there for a moment, processing. That was unexpected, Daniel said. Very unexpected. Lena set her phone down carefully, like it might explode. He's moving on. Actually, moving on, not just saying it. How do you feel about that? Relieved, mostly. A little weird, but mostly relieved. She turned to Daniel. Is it terrible that I'm glad he's found someone else? That takes the pressure off, you know? Now I don't have to feel guilty about being happy when he's miserable. That's not terrible, that's human. I kept waiting for this conversation to hurt more, for there to be this moment of regret or loss, but all I feel is lighter. Daniel pulled her into his arms. That's because you're exactly where you're supposed to be. With you. With me. They kissed, slow and deep, and Daniel felt something shift between them. Some last piece of her past letting go, making room for their future. When they finally broke apart, Lena was smiling. I should probably let you go home. You have work tomorrow. So do you. Yeah, but I'm good at functioning on no sleep. College professor superpower. I'm not leaving yet. No? No. I'm going to help you finish unpacking this room, and then I'm going to make sure you eat something other than pizza, and then maybe I'll think about going home. You don't have to take care of me. I know, but I want to. They spent the next 2 hours finishing the living room, ordering Thai food when they realized it was almost 10 and neither of them had eaten a real meal. Lena told him about her students, about the one kid who kept submitting papers about conspiracy theories, and the girl who wrote everything in pink pen despite Lena's explicit instructions. She says pink is her power color, Lena explained. How am I supposed to argue with that? You're not. Pink is clearly a power color. That's what I said. So now I grade all her papers in purple because it's my power color. You're ridiculous. She started it. Daniel helped her wash dishes, their shoulders bumping companionably, and thought about how easy this was, how right it felt to be in her space doing mundane things together. I should really go, he said around midnight. Emma will wonder where I am if she wakes up. Will she? Probably not, but I should go anyway. Lena walked him to the door, leaning against the frame. Thank you for staying, for being here through all of this. Where else would I be? I don't know, but I'm glad you're here and not there. He kissed her goodnight, taking his time, trying to convey everything he felt that didn't have words yet. When he finally pulled away, they were both breathing hard. Tomorrow? Lena asked. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. Daniel walked back across the street, letting himself into his quiet house. He checked on Emma, who was sprawled across her bed with one leg hanging off the side, whiskers smudged across her pillow. He covered her with the blanket she'd kicked off, then stood there watching her sleep. This was his life now. This house, this daughter, this woman across the street who'd somehow become the center of everything. It was messy and complicated and nothing like what he'd planned. It was perfect. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that felt sustainable. Lena came for dinner twice a week, helped Emma with her costume, graded papers at Daniel's kitchen table while he made lunches for the next day. Daniel went to Lena's place on weekends when Emma was with his mother, helped her hang pictures and fix the leaky faucet in her bathroom and assemble furniture that came with incomprehensible instructions. They didn't talk about the future exactly, but it was there in the small decisions they made together, the way their lives were weaving into something shared. Then came the morning that changed everything. Daniel was making breakfast when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Daniel Hayes? A woman's voice, professional and cautious. Speaking. This is Jennifer Martins from Portland General. I'm calling about Sarah Hayes. You're listed as her emergency contact. His stomach dropped. What happened? She was in a car accident yesterday evening. She's stable, but she's asking for you. And for Emma. The world tilted sideways. Daniel sat down hard on a kitchen chair. How bad is it? She has a concussion and some broken ribs. She'll recover, but she's pretty shaken up. She keeps saying she needs to talk to you. I'm in Connecticut. I understand, but she's insistent. Is there any way you could come? Daniel looked at Emma, who was eating cereal and watching cartoons, completely unaware that her mother had just re-entered their lives in the worst possible way. I'll figure something out, he said. Tell her I'll be there as soon as I can. He hung up and sat there, trying to process. Sarah, car accident, hospital, Portland, which was a 5-hour flight and a lifetime away from the stability he'd built. Dad? Emma was looking at him now, concern on her face. What's wrong? That was the hospital. Your mom was in an accident. Emma's eyes went wide. Is she okay? She's going to be fine, but she wants to see us. Do we have to go? The question was so small, so hesitant, that Daniel's heart broke a little. I think we should, he said carefully. Even if it's hard. She's still your mom. Emma set down her cereal bowl. Can Miss Carter come? I don't know, honey. This is family stuff. She feels like family. Daniel pulled Emma into a hug, holding her tight, while he figured out how to handle this. Sarah hadn't been part of their lives for 3 years. Emma barely mentioned her anymore, had seemingly accepted that her mother had chosen a different path. But now Sarah was in a hospital bed asking for them, and Daniel had to decide how to respond. He called Lena after he dropped Emma at school, explained the situation in a rush of words that didn't quite make sense. I need to take Emma to Portland, he said. Just for a few days. Make sure Sarah's okay. Let Emma see her. Of course you do. I'm sorry. I know the timing is terrible. Daniel, your ex-wife was in an accident. Timing doesn't matter. I know, but no buts. You take care of this. Emma needs to see her mother. You need to make sure she's okay. I'll be here when you get back. The certainty in her voice steadied him. You're sure? I'm sure. This isn't about us. This is about Emma and what she needs. I love you. I love you too. Now go book flights and stop worrying about me. He did, arranging everything with the mechanical efficiency of someone trying not to think too hard about what he was doing. Flights for the next morning, hotel room near the hospital, email to his boss explaining the emergency. Emma took the news quietly that evening, packing her overnight bag with unusual care. Is Mom going to want to come back? She asked. I don't know, honey. Do you want her to come back? No, but that doesn't mean we don't help her when she needs us. Even though she left? Even though she left. Emma thought about this. Miss Carter's better anyway. Emma. What? She is. She actually wants to be here. Daniel couldn't argue with that logic, so he didn't try. Lena came over that night after Emma was asleep, bringing cookies she'd baked that were only slightly burnt. Stress baking, she explained. I'm not very good at it. They sat on the couch, not really talking, just being together. What if she wants back in? Daniel finally asked. What if seeing us makes her realize what she gave up? Then you deal with it. But Daniel, don't borrow trouble. Go, make sure she's okay, let Emma see her mother. Everything else can wait. What if she tries to take Emma? She won't. She left, remember? She made her choice. People change their minds. Some people do, but you're catastrophizing, one crisis at a time. She was right, but that didn't make the anxiety any easier to carry. They left early the next morning, Emma quiet in her airplane seat, clutching the stuffed cat Lena had given her as a good luck charm. Daniel watched his daughter stare out the window at clouds that looked like cotton and wondered what was going through her mind. The hospital was sterile and too bright, smelling of antiseptic and cafeteria food. Sarah was in a private room on the 4th floor, looking smaller than Daniel remembered. Her face was bruised, one arm in a sling, and when she saw them in the doorway, she started crying. I'm so sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. Emma hung back, uncertain. Daniel guided her forward gently. It's okay, he said to Sarah. You're okay. That's what matters. But even as he said it, he knew nothing about this was okay. Nothing about any of this was simple or clean or going to resolve itself neatly. This was life, messy and complicated, and all he could do was handle it one moment at a time. Sarah wiped at her eyes with her good hand, wincing as the movement pulled at her ribs. Emma stood frozen in the doorway, the stuffed cat clutched so tight her knuckles had gone white. Come here, baby, Sarah said, her voice breaking. Please. Emma looked up at Daniel, asking permission without words. He nodded, and she moved forward slowly, like approaching something that might bite. When she reached the bedside, Sarah tried to hug her but gasped at the pain. It's okay, Emma said quickly, patting her mother's shoulder with awkward gentleness. You don't have to hug me. I want to. I've wanted to for 3 years. The words hung in the sterile air. Daniel stayed by the door, giving them space, his phone heavy in his pocket where he'd already sent Lena 3 texts about the flight and the hospital and how strange it felt to be standing here. Why didn't you? Emma asked, her voice small. Want to see me before, I mean. Sarah's face crumpled. Because I'm a coward. Because I convinced myself you were better off without me. Because every time I thought about calling, I got scared that you'd hate me and I couldn't handle that. I don't hate you. You should. I left you. Yeah. Emma's voice was matter-of-fact, the brutal honesty of children who haven't learned to soften truth yet. That was pretty bad. Daniel almost smiled despite everything. It was worse than bad, Sarah said. It was unforgivable, but I'm asking you to forgive me anyway. Emma pulled back, studying her mother's bruised face. Are you coming back? Is that why you wanted us here? No, baby. I'm not coming back. Sarah looked past Emma to Daniel. I'm not here to mess up your lives again. I just needed to see you, to tell you I'm sorry, to make sure you know that leaving was about me and my problems, not about you not being enough. I already know that, Emma said. Dad told me like 100 times. Oh, your dad's a good man. I know that too. Sarah smiled through tears. Of course you do. They sat together for a while, Emma perched on the edge of the hospital bed, Sarah asking questions about school and friends and what Emma liked to do now. Emma answered carefully, still guarded but gradually warming up. She told her mother about the play, about her friend Madison and the hamster campaign, about how she was learning to make friendship bracelets. Ms. Carter taught me, Emma said. She's really good at stuff like that. Who's Miss Carter? Emma glanced at Daniel. Dad's girlfriend. She lives across the street from us. Sarah's eyes met Daniel's over their daughter's head. You're seeing someone? Yeah. Is it serious? Very serious. Something flickered across Sarah's face, but it wasn't jealousy or regret. It looked more like relief. Good, she said. That's good. You deserve to be happy. A nurse came in to check vitals, giving them an excuse to step outside. Emma went to find a vending machine, leaving Daniel and Sarah alone in the hallway. I wasn't trying to disrupt anything, Sarah said. When I asked them to call you, I just panicked. The accident was so sudden, and I was lying there thinking about everything I'd screwed up, and all I could think was that I needed to see Emma one more time. I get it. Do you? Because I feel like I just dragged you across the country for my own peace of mind. Emma needed this too. She's been asking about you more lately. Not a lot, but enough that I knew she was thinking about you. Sarah looked down at her injured arm. I moved to Portland 6 months ago. Got a job as a paralegal, which is about as exciting as it sounds. Started therapy finally. Did the work I should have done before I blew up my marriage. That's good. Is it? Because most days it just feels like I'm trying to forgive myself for things that shouldn't be forgivable. Everyone deserves the chance to try. Even people who abandon their kids? Daniel didn't have an easy answer for that, so he just said, Emma's resilient. She's hurt, but she's not broken. And she's doing really well. Because of you, not because of me. Because she's strong on her own. Emma returned with a candy bar she was trying to hide behind her back. Daniel pretended not to notice. Can we come back tomorrow? Emma asked Sarah. Before we fly home? You want to? Yeah, I have more stuff to tell you about the play and everything. Sarah's face lit up in a way that made her look younger, less damaged. I'd really like that. They left soon after, checked into the hotel Daniel had booked near the hospital. It was one of those generic business hotels with beige everything and art that looked like it had been purchased in bulk. Emma claimed the bed by the window, spreading out her stuffed animals with careful precision. That was weird, she said once they were settled. Yeah, it was. But not as bad as I thought it would be. No? I thought I'd be really mad, but mostly I just felt sad for her. Emma arranged her stuffed cat next to the others. She looked so small in that bed. Daniel sat on the edge of his daughter's bed. You're allowed to feel however you feel about it. Mad, sad, confused, all of it's okay. I know, I just thought it would be different. She looked at him seriously. Are you mad at her? Not anymore. I was for a long time, but I'm not now. Because of Miss Carter? Partly, but also because staying mad takes too much energy. That makes sense, Emma yawned. Can I call Miss Carter? I want to tell her about it. Daniel handed her his phone, and Emma curled up with it, launching into a detailed account of the hospital visit with the kind of enthusiasm she usually reserved for describing elaborate birthday parties. He could hear Lena's voice through the speaker, asking questions and making encouraging sounds, and something in his chest loosened. When Emma finally hung up, she looked more settled. Ms. Carter says we should bring Mom some real food tomorrow because hospital food is disgusting. Ms. Carter is right. She usually is. They ordered room service, watched a movie neither of them paid much attention to, and eventually Emma fell asleep sprawled across her bed. Daniel covered her with the extra blanket, then stepped out onto the small balcony to call Lena properly. "How are you?" she asked immediately. "Weird. Good weird, I think, but weird. How's Emma handling it?" "Better than I expected. She's processing." He leaned against the railing, looking out at Portland's lights. "Sarah's not trying to come back. She made that clear." "Did you think she would be?" "I didn't know what to think, but she seems different, like she's actually done the work." "That's good. Complicated, but good." "How are you? Really?" Lena was quiet for a moment. "I'm fine. Missing you both, but fine." "You sure?" "Daniel, I'm not going to fall apart because you had to help your ex-wife. I'm also not going to pretend I love the situation. But I trust you. That's enough." "I love you." "I love you too. Now go get some sleep. You sound exhausted." He did sleep, fitfully, and woke to Emma already dressed and ready to go back to the hospital. They stopped at a bakery Lena had looked up and texted him the address for, got coffee and pastries that smelled infinitely better than anything from a hospital cafeteria. Sarah was sitting up when they arrived, looking more alert despite the bruising that had darkened overnight to spectacular purples and greens. "You brought food," she said gratefully. "Bless you." Emma handed over a chocolate croissant. "Ms. Carter said hospital food would make you want to die." "Emma," Daniel said. "What? That's what she said?" Sarah laughed, then winced. "She's not wrong. Tell Ms. Carter thank you." They spent the morning together, the awkwardness from yesterday gradually fading into something almost comfortable. Emma showed Sarah photos on Daniel's phone, narrating each one with the kind of detail only an 8-year-old could sustain. Sarah listened with complete attention, asking questions and making appropriate responses, and Daniel could see her cataloging everything she'd missed. Around noon, Emma went to the bathroom, leaving them alone again. "She's amazing," Sarah said quietly. "You've done such a good job with her." "She did most of it herself." "Don't do that. Don't minimize what you built. I know what I left you with. A broken marriage, a traumatized kid, a life you had to rebuild from nothing." "It wasn't nothing. I had Emma. You had a 4-year-old who cried every night for her mother, who kept asking when I was coming home." Sarah's voice cracked. "I know because I called your mom sometimes, just to check. She never knew it was me, but I'd call and hang up after she answered, just to hear that everything was okay." Daniel hadn't known that, didn't know how to process it now. "Why didn't you come back then? If you were worried?" "Because I was drinking too much and having panic attacks and I could barely take care of myself. I knew if I came back, I'd just make everything worse." She looked at him directly. "I know you think I left because I didn't love you both enough, but I left because I loved Emma too much to let her see me fall apart. You could have asked for help. I know, but I didn't know how, and by the time I figured it out, too much time had passed." Emma returned, and they shifted back to safer topics. The play, school, Emma's campaign to get a hamster that Daniel was still resisting. But the conversation with Sarah stayed with Daniel, reframing things he'd spent 3 years being certain about. They left mid-afternoon, promising to visit once more before their flight tomorrow. In the rental car, Emma was quiet, staring out the window at Portland's gray sky. "What are you thinking?" Daniel asked. "That I'm glad we came, but I'm also glad we're going home tomorrow." "Me too, honey." "Do you think Mom will visit us? Eventually?" "I don't know. Would you want her to?" Emma considered this seriously. "Maybe. Not all the time, but maybe sometimes. We can figure that out if she asks." "Okay." Emma turned to look at him. "But Ms. Carter's not going anywhere, right? Even if Mom wants to visit sometimes?" "Lena's not going anywhere." "Good. Because I like our life now. I don't want it to change." "It won't change. Not the important parts." They spent the rest of the day exploring Portland, eating food, cart Thai food that was too spicy for Emma and perfectly spicy for Daniel, walking through bookstores and vintage shops. It felt like playing hooky from real life, this suspended space where normal rules didn't apply. That evening, back at the hotel, Daniel called Lena while Emma was in the bath. "We're coming home tomorrow," he said. "Early flight, home by dinner. I'll make something that's not from a jar." "You don't have to." "I want to. I've missed you both." 2 days, Lena. We've been gone 2 days. 2 very long days. Her voice softened. "How was today?" "Good. Strange, but good. I think Emma got what she needed from this." "What did you get?" Daniel thought about Sarah's confession, about understanding finally that her leaving had been about her own breaking point and not about them being insufficient. Closure, I guess. The actual kind, not just the kind where you tell yourself you're over something. That's important. Yeah. He could hear Emma singing in the bathroom, some song from a movie he couldn't identify. "Lena?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for not making this harder than it already was." "You keep thanking me for basic human decency." "Maybe that's because I'm not used to it." "Then get used to it, because I'm not going anywhere." They talked until Emma emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel that was too big for her, demanding help with her hair. Daniel said goodbye to Lena and spent the next 20 minutes trying to detangle Emma's wet hair while she complained that he was pulling. "Carter's better at this," Emma grumbled. "I know. She uses conditioner. I'm using conditioner." "Not enough." They fell asleep early, Emma sprawled across her bed again, Daniel finally relaxing for the first time since that phone call had upended everything. Their last visit to the hospital the next morning was brief. Sarah was being discharged later that day, moving to a recovery facility for a week of monitoring. She hugged Emma carefully, told her she loved her, and promised to stay in touch better. "Can I write you letters?" Emma asked. "Real ones, not just emails?" "I'd love that." "Okay, but I'm not very good at spelling." "That's what makes letters interesting." Emma hugged her mother one more time, then went to wait in the hallway. Sarah looked at Daniel with something like gratitude. "Take care of her," she said. "I always have." "I know, but I mean it. Take care of her. Love her enough for both of us." "Sarah, let me say this." She took a shaky breath. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for another chance. I'm just asking you to give her the life I couldn't, the stability I couldn't provide, the love I didn't know how to give properly. You love her. That's enough. Is it? It has to be. Because she's your daughter, and she needs to know that. Sarah nodded, eyes wet. "Tell your girlfriend she's lucky to have you and Emma. I'm the lucky one." "Yeah, you are." They said goodbye, and Daniel walked out feeling lighter somehow, like he'd been carrying something heavy for 3 years and finally got permission to set it down. The flight home was smooth, Emma asleep against his shoulder before they'd even reached cruising altitude. Daniel watched clouds scroll past the window and thought about how life had a way of circling back to things you thought you'd left behind, forcing you to look at them from new angles. Sarah had been right about one thing. He was lucky. Lucky to have Emma, lucky to have survived the worst and built something good from the wreckage. Lucky that Lena had moved in across the street and given him a second chance at something he'd thought was lost forever. They landed just after 5, and Daniel saw Lena waiting at arrivals before Emma did. She was holding a handmade sign that said, "Welcome Home," in Emma's handwriting from the banner she'd made weeks ago, surrounded by strategic glitter that caught the fluorescent lights. Emma shrieked and ran, launching herself at Lena with the kind of enthusiasm that suggested 2 days had been 2 years. Lena caught her, stumbling back a step, laughing as Emma chattered about everything at once. "One thing at a time," Lena said. "I can't process this much information." "But there's so much to tell you." "Then you can tell me over dinner. I made lasagna." "Is it burnt?" "Only a little bit." Daniel reached them, and Lena looked up at him with such open relief that something in his chest cracked open. "Hi," he said stupidly. "Hi." She was still holding Emma, but reached out her free hand to him. "You okay?" "Yeah, really okay." They drove home through late afternoon traffic, Emma maintaining a constant stream of commentary from the back seat. Lena kept her hand on Daniel's knee, grounding and real. And he thought about how a month ago he'd been terrified she'd get on a plane to Connecticut and realize she'd made a mistake. But she'd stayed. She'd trusted him to handle his past without falling back into it. She'd been certain when he'd been scared. The lasagna was indeed slightly burnt on the edges, but they ate it anyway, sitting around Daniel's kitchen table like they'd done it 1,000 times instead of a handful. Emma showed Lena every photo from the trip, narrating with the dramatic flair of someone who'd discovered she had stories worth telling. And then Mom said I could write her letters, real ones with stamps and everything. And I said, okay, but I'm not very good at spelling. And she said that's fine because it makes letters more interesting. That's very true, Lena agreed. Some of the best letters I've ever received were full of spelling mistakes. Really? Really? It means someone cared enough to write even when it was hard. Emma considered this, then nodded seriously. I'm going to write her one tomorrow, about the play. After dinner, Emma crashed on the couch, exhausted from travel and emotions. Daniel carried her up to bed, tucked her in with the stuffed cat, and came back down to find Lena washing dishes. Leave them, he said. I'll do them later. I don't mind. Lena. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Thank you. For what? Burnt lasagna? For being exactly who you are. For not freaking out when I had to leave. For trusting me. She turned in his arms, water still dripping from her hands. I told you I'm not going anywhere. I know, but I need to tell you something. Okay? He took a breath, trying to figure out how to say what he'd been thinking about for the past 2 days. I spent 3 years thinking I'd used up my chance at happiness. That Sarah leaving was punishment for not being good enough. And the best I could hope for was to not screw up raising Emma. And then you showed up, and it was like the universe was giving me another shot. But I've been so afraid of losing you that I haven't really told you what this means to me. What does it mean? It means you're not just my second chance. You're the thing I've been waiting for since I was 20 years old and too scared to talk to you in the library. You're the person I think about when I wake up and the reason I stopped just surviving and started actually living again. Lena's eyes were bright. Daniel, let me finish. He cupped her face in his hands. I'm in love with you. Not just the idea of you, not just because you're convenient or because we have history. I'm in love with you because you burn muffins and grade papers in purple ink, and you make Emma laugh, and you see me as someone worth choosing. You are worth choosing. I know. I'm starting to believe that finally. He kissed her softly. So here's what I'm saying. I don't know what the future looks like exactly, but I know I want you in it, every day, every version of it. The messy parts and the easy parts and everything in between. Is this your way of asking me to move in? Maybe eventually. Right now I'm just asking you to keep showing up. Keep being the person who makes everything better just by existing. Lena laughed, but it came out shaky. I can do that. Yeah? Yeah. She kissed him, deep and certain. Because I'm in love with you too. Have been since before I knew what to call it. And I'm done wasting time being scared of good things. They stood in his kitchen, holding each other while the house settled around them, and Daniel thought about timing, about how they'd gotten it wrong for so many years, circling each other without ever connecting, about how Sarah leaving had broken him open enough to rebuild differently, about how Lena's divorce had brought her home to the one place she'd always belonged. Emma's play is next week, he said eventually. I know. I've been working on her costume. She's going to want you in the front row. Where else would I be? Nowhere. But I wanted to make sure you knew. You're family now, to both of us. Lena's smile was tremulous but real. Good, because you're stuck with me. I can live with that. They cleaned up the kitchen together, shoulders bumping in the comfortable rhythm of people who'd figured out how to exist in each other's space. When they were done, they sat on the couch and Lena told him about her week, about the student who'd finally written something good, and the one who kept submitting plagiarized essays from websites that were obviously plagiarized. How do they think I won't notice? She said. The writing style changes completely mid-paragraph. Maybe they think you don't read them. I read every single one, even the terrible ones, especially the terrible ones, especially those. Around 11, Lena stood to leave and Daniel walked her to the door. Stay, he said impulsively. Emma's upstairs. I know, but stay anyway. Not like that, just stay. I want to wake up with you here. Lena studied him for a long moment. You're sure? Completely sure. She stayed. They fell asleep on the couch again, and when Daniel woke just before dawn, she was curled against him, breathing steady and even. He lay there watching the sky lighten beyond the windows, thinking about all the ways his life had changed in the past 2 months. Emma found them there in the morning, bringing her cereal to the coffee table so she could eat while watching cartoons with them. "Is Miss Carter living here now, Chet?" she asked around a mouthful of cereal. "No," Lena said, "just visiting." "You visit a lot. Is that okay?" Emma considered this seriously. "Yeah, it's good. The house is less quiet when you're here." The week leading up to the play passed in a blur of rehearsals and last-minute costume adjustments. Lena proved to be surprisingly good with the sewing machine, turning Emma's vision of the Cheshire Cat into reality with striped leggings and a tail that actually stayed attached. "You're a miracle worker," Daniel said, watching her pin the final pieces. "I'm really not. But YouTube tutorials help." The night of the play, Daniel's mother came, along with half the neighborhood, including Linda Pemberton, who always knew everything about everyone. They sat in the front row, exactly where Emma had wanted them, and watched her daughter prowl across the stage with exaggerated cat movements that were both ridiculous and somehow perfect. "That's my granddaughter," his mother whispered proudly to anyone who would listen. Emma's smile was visible even through the face paint, wide and genuine, and when she caught Daniel's eye during her big scene, he gave her a thumbs up that made her grin wider. After the play, there was punch and cookies in the gym. Emma dragged Lena around, introducing her to everyone as "my dad's girlfriend who made my costume." And Lena handled it with the kind of grace that made Daniel love her even more. "She's wonderful," his mother said, cornering him by the cookie table. "Don't screw this up." "I'm trying not to." "Try harder." But Daniel was already trying as hard as he knew how, showing up, being present, saying the things he used to keep locked up inside. Learning that vulnerability wasn't weakness, and that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let someone see you completely. They drove home that night with Emma asleep in the back seat, still wearing her costume, her face paint smudged but her smile visible even in sleep. "She was incredible," Lena said. "She really was. You should be proud." "I am, of her, of this, of us." Lena reached for his hand. "Me too." They carried Emma inside together, got her into pajamas without fully waking her, tucked her into bed with the gentle efficiency of people who'd done this dance before. Then they stood in the doorway, watching her sleep. "I could get used to this," Lena said quietly. "Yeah?" "Yeah." She looked at him. "Is that crazy? We've only been together for a couple months. Nothing about this has been normal. Why start now?" "Fair point." They went downstairs, made tea neither of them wanted, sat on the couch in the dim living room. "I got a letter today," Lena said, "from Richard's lawyer. The divorce is officially final, every piece of paperwork signed and filed." "How do you feel?" "Free, terrified, relieved, all of it at once." She set down her mug. "But mostly I feel ready." "For what?" "For this. For whatever comes next. For building something real instead of something that just looks good on paper." Daniel pulled her close, breathing in the lavender scent of her shampoo. "I'm ready too." "Good. Because I'm all in, Daniel. Completely, maybe stupidly, all in. Nothing stupid about it." They sat like that for a long time, just existing together in the quiet house. Eventually, Lena fell asleep against his shoulder, and Daniel sat there holding her, thinking about second chances and timing, and how sometimes the best things in life were the ones you waited years for without knowing you were waiting. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Emma wrote me her first letter. Thank you for bringing her to Portland. I know it wasn't easy." Daniel typed back, "She needed it. So did I. Are you happy? Really happy?" "Yeah, I really am." "Good. You deserve that." He set his phone down and looked at Lena sleeping against him, at the stairs leading up to Emma's room, at the life they were building together in this house that had once felt too big and now felt exactly right. The next morning, Lena woke before him, and he found her in the kitchen making coffee with the kind of focus she usually reserved for grading papers. "What's going on in that head?" he asked. She turned, smiling. "I was thinking about how I moved here 6 months ago with no plan except to start over, and how I kept telling myself I just needed space to figure out who I was without Richard." And? And I figured it out. I'm the person who burns muffins and grades papers in purple ink and falls asleep on your couch every other night. I'm the person who loves you and Emma and this neighborhood and this life we're accidentally building together. Doesn't sound accidental to me. No, it sounds pretty deliberate, actually. She poured 2 cups of coffee, handed him one. So here's what I'm thinking. Not right now, but eventually. Maybe we stop pretending I'm just visiting. Maybe we actually talk about what it would look like if I didn't go home every night. Daniel's heart kicked up. You want to move in? Eventually, not tomorrow, but eventually. She looked nervous now. Is that too much? Too fast? No. He set down his coffee and pulled her close. It's exactly right. Emma appeared in the doorway, already dressed for school. Are you guys talking about Miss Carter moving in? Because I heard you and I think it's a good idea. Emma, we've talked about eavesdropping, Daniel said. I wasn't eavesdropping. You were talking loud. She grabbed a granola bar from the pantry. But seriously, she should move in. Then we'd have someone who actually knows how to cook. I can cook. You make jar sauce, Dad. That doesn't count. Lena laughed and the sound filled the kitchen with warmth. How about we start with me staying over more often and see how it goes? That works, Emma said seriously. We can, test it out. Exactly. A trial run. But you're definitely moving in eventually, right? Emma, Daniel warned. What? I'm just clarifying expectations. They drove Emma to school together, Lena in the passenger seat like she belonged there. And when they got back to the house, neither of them moved to get out of the car. This is really happening, Lena said. Looks like it. I'm scared. Me too. But good scared. The kind where you know you're doing the right thing even though it's terrifying. Daniel reached for her hand. I spent 10 years thinking I'd missed my chance with you. And then you showed up blocking my driveway, and it was like the universe was saying, here, try again, and this time don't be an idiot about it. Are you being an idiot about it? I'm trying really hard not to be. Then I think we're doing okay. They went inside and Lena started gathering her things from where they'd accumulated over the past weeks. A toothbrush in the bathroom, a sweater on the couch, books stacked on the coffee table. Small markers of a life being lived together. Leave them, Daniel said. All of it. Leave it here. You sure? Completely sure. He pulled her into his arms. This is your home too, even if you haven't moved in officially. This is where you belong. Lena kissed him, and it felt like a promise. Not the kind you make with words, but the kind you make with choices and presence and showing up day after day. I love you, she said against his mouth. I love you too. Even though I burn everything I cook, especially because of that. They spent the rest of the morning doing ordinary things, laundry and dishes, and arguing about whether the living room furniture should be rearranged. It was mundane and perfect, the kind of day Daniel used to dread for its emptiness, and now looked forward to for its fullness. That evening, after dinner and homework and all the small rituals of family life, Emma asked if Lena would help her write her letter to Sarah. I don't know what to say, Emma admitted. I want to tell her about the play, but I don't want her to feel bad that she missed it. Just tell her what happened, Lena suggested. She'll probably be happy you want to share it with her. Even though she wasn't there? Especially because she wasn't there? It means you're including her anyway. Emma thought about this, then nodded and pulled out her notebook. Lena sat with her while she wrote, offering spelling help and encouragement, and Daniel watched them from the doorway, his heart full in a way he'd forgotten was possible. This was it. This was the life he'd been too afraid to reach for, the happiness he'd convinced himself he didn't deserve. And here it was anyway, messy and imperfect, and more real than anything he'd ever built before. Later, after Emma was asleep and Lena was gathering her things to actually go home for once, Daniel stopped her at the door. Don't, he said. Don't what? Don't go home tonight. Stay here, not as a test run or a trial. Just stay because this is where you want to be. Lena set down her bag. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He cupped her face in his hands. I spent 10 years being too scared to tell you how I felt. I'm not making that mistake again. I love you. I want you here. Every night, every morning, every boring Tuesday evening, I want this life with you. I want that too. Then stay. She did. She unpacked her bag, hung her coat in the closet, brushed her teeth at the sink next to his. They fell asleep in his bed, and when Daniel woke in the middle of the night, momentarily disoriented, Lena was there beside him, real and warm and exactly where she belonged. The next few weeks settled into a new rhythm. Lena officially moved more of her things over, though she kept her house for now, not quite ready to give up that safety net. Emma started writing Sarah every week, filling the letters with drawings and stories and questions about Portland. Sarah wrote back, her responses careful and loving and full of the kind of attention she should have been giving all along. She says she's proud of me, Emma told Daniel one evening, for the play. She should be. You were amazing. She also says she's proud of you for being a good dad. Daniel's throat tightened. That's nice of her to say. Is it weird that she's writing to us now? A little, but good weird. Yeah, good weird. Daniel's mother invited them all for dinner one Sunday, and it was chaotic and loud and exactly what family was supposed to be. She grilled Lena about her job and her plans and her intentions, but with the kind of warmth that made it clear she approved. You're good for him, she told Lena while Daniel was helping Emma with dessert. He smiles now, real smiles, not the fake ones he used to do. He's good for me too, Lena said. Good, then don't screw it up. I'm trying not to. Try harder. When they got home that night, Emma went straight to bed, exhausted from playing with her cousins. Daniel and Lena sat on the porch, watching the neighborhood settle into darkness. Your mom's intense, Lena said. She likes you. How can you tell? She only threatens people she likes. Lena laughed. That's a weird metric. Welcome to my family. They sat in comfortable silence, and Daniel thought about how a few months ago he'd been sitting on this same porch, alone, and resigned to that aloneness. And now here was Lena, solid and real beside him, and in Tetis was Emma sleeping peacefully because she knew she was loved and safe. I want to sell my house, Lena said suddenly. Daniel turned to look at her. What? My house, across the street. I want to sell it. She met his eyes. I'm ready. I don't need a backup plan anymore. Are you sure? Completely sure. She took his hand. I don't want to keep one foot out the door just in case things don't work out. I want to be all in. Both feet, no safety net. What if we mess this up? Then we mess it up together and figure it out. But Daniel, I'm tired of being careful. I'm tired of protecting myself from good things because I'm afraid they'll turn bad. He kissed her, deep and certain, pouring everything he felt into it. When they finally broke apart, they were both smiling. Okay, he said. Sell the house. Move in properly. Let's do this. Yeah? Yeah. They made it official a week later. Lena put her house on the market, and it sold within days to a young couple with a new baby. She moved her remaining things over gradually, filling the empty spaces in Daniel's house with her books and art, and the particular chaos that came with really living somewhere. Emma helped unpack, directing where things should go with the authority of someone who'd been planning this for weeks. Your desk should go here, she instructed Lena, so you have good light for grading papers. You've really thought this through. I made a plan. Want to see? Emma pulled out a notebook full of detailed drawings showing where everything should go. Lena looked at Daniel over their daughter's head, eyes bright with love and laughter. We should definitely follow this plan, Lena said seriously. It's clearly been carefully researched. Very carefully, Emma agreed. They spent the weekend rearranging, making space for two lives to merge into one. It wasn't seamless. They argued about where to hang pictures and whose coffee maker was better, and whether the couch should stay where it was or move to the other wall. But even the arguments felt good, felt real, like they were building something that would last. On Sunday evening, with everything finally unpacked and arranged, they sat together on the newly positioned couch, Emma between them, watching a movie none of them were really paying attention to. This is nice, Emma said, having everyone in one place. Yeah, Daniel agreed. It really is. Lena squeezed his hand and he squeezed back, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, Daniel felt completely at peace. The universe had terrible timing, he thought again, but occasionally, just occasionally, it got things exactly right. And when it did, when all the pieces finally fell into place after years of being scattered, It was worth every moment of waiting. He looked at Lana, at Emma, at the life they'd built together from broken pieces and second chances, and the kind of love that waited patiently until everyone was ready to receive it. This was it. This was everything he'd been afraid to hope for, and it was better than any fantasy he'd constructed during those long years of thinking he'd missed his chance. Because the thing about second chances, Daniel realized, was that they only worked when you were brave enough to take them, when you stopped protecting yourself from possibility and just let life happen. He'd spent 10 years being too scared to reach for what he wanted, but not anymore. Now he was reaching with both hands and holding on tight, and he wasn't letting go.